everybody, welcome into a Flyers game preview. I'm Kevin Durso. This afternoon, the Flyers face the Washington Capitals at 12 p.m. Before getting started, this video is brought to you as part of Flyers coverage on sportstalkphilly.com and the YWT podcast. Get all of your Flyers coverage at sportstalkphilly.com. Follow me on Twitter at Kevin_Durso and find more coverage from me over at 3ESPN.com. And be sure to listen and subscribe to the YWT podcast. So once again, it's Flyers Capitals today, and first meeting between these two teams this season. Before we get into today's game, really quickly, just want to touch on Friday night's 2-1 loss to the Boston Bruins. I'll be talking more about this on the next episode of the YWT podcast, which we'll be recording after the Flyers Capitals game Monday afternoon. But did want to touch on this game because it's another one of those games where the Flyers look like they're playing better. It looks like they're in a position to get a win against a tough team like Boston, and in 27 seconds, 2 goals put them behind in the game, and now they're trailing. Now they're forced to play from behind, and they're never able to get back into that game in that way. So it's another opportunity to gain some points in the standings. It's another opportunity for them to keep pace with this Boston Bruins team because they've played them 4 times so far, and they've lost 4 games, and they have to those games because one went to a shootout and the other went to overtime. And it really makes Wednesday's loss look bad because you had a chance to close out a 3-1 lead, got undisciplined, took some penalties, gave up power play goals as a result. And not only did that give the Bruins a point to get it to overtime, but it gave them the opportunity to score the game-winning goal and take another point away from you. So now that's a bunch of points you can't get back. But you got to forget about the Boston Bruins for right now. You got to focus on the Washington Capitals, keep moving forward, and try to get back in and keep moving in the right direction. This is a big game to me because of the fact that, as I said earlier in the week, you have an opportunity to show how you stack up against these other teams, these 2 teams in particular that have been at the top of the standings all season long. And, you haven't played Washington yet, so this is the first chance to show how you stack up against them. But obviously, you haven't been able to pull it off against Boston. So if you can pull it off against Washington, at least it kind of shows that Boston's the team that's the problem area for you that you have to finish against. And you played 4 games, all of them without a key player who, by all accounts, is probably returning today. Sean Couturier is close to returning. We don't know if he's in the lineup for good yet. That's probably going to come right at warmups, but he did take practice in all of the normal ways for him. He was part of the top line. He was part of the top power play. He led the stretches at the end of the practice, which draw a big ovation from his teammates, and it sure seemed like he's going to play. The other injury updates that were kind of coming up as the game went along against Boston, Carter Hart was not able to play in that game, or not even able to serve as backup. It wasn't going to be his start anyway, but he wasn't even able to serve as backup because he was dealing with some back spasms. He's good to go. I'll get into him a little bit more. And then Oscar Lindblom hit game on Friday and was right back on the ice for practice on Saturday, so he's good to go too. So all of that's good news. The only absence that could be possible is Phil Myers missed Friday's game with an upper body injury. It seems like he will miss this game as well. He did not practice with his normal partner in Travis Sanheim. He was skating with Mark Friedman in Saturday's practice, but he was on the ice. So it doesn't seem to indicate that it's a long-term thing. It just means he might not be available for this game, maybe hold out for Tuesday. Let's get into the goalie matchups, and there we have Carter Hart right there. He's going to be back in goal for the Flyers. Had a strong game against Boston earlier in the week on Wednesday. Was playing really well, was one of the big reasons why they were in that game and able to put themselves in a position to lead that game 3-1. He was pretty much helpless on every goal that was scored because they were all power play goals toward the end. I mean, you look at the first goal of the game, 12 seconds in, you chalk it up to a bad start, poor shift from the beginning, putting the 4th line out against Boston's top line, whatever it is, everybody had to be better from the start, and that's fine. But from that point, Carter Hart was excellent until you got to the late third period stages when he was really left helpless because when you're dealing with a team like Boston and they're on a power play, not only with 7 minutes to go, but with 2 minutes to go into the final seconds, overtime, it's a 3. So you had a bunch of different situations there. You had a very quick goal off of a 5-on-4 power play with about 8 minutes left in the third period. In the closing seconds, it's another power play, but it's not 5-on-4 now. It's 6-on-4 with the goalie pulled. In overtime, it's 4-on-3. It's different situations where a lot of ice is opened up to certain guys, and that's how it's easy for David Pastrnak and Patrice Bergeron to get themselves in position to set up goals. So that's not really on him. He's continued to get better over the course of the last couple of weeks. I anticipate seeing him be just as well in this game. On the other side, you got Vitek Vanacek, who's been really having to fill in for Ilya Samsonov this entire almost. Samsonov on the COVID list for a long time now, and he's still not able to come off of that list. He's still not going to be back, at least for this game, probably for Tuesday as well. And Vanecek's come in and played really well. You look at the numbers, his 5-2-2 record, which is more of a product of the team, obviously, but 9-11 save percentage is really good. A 2.95 goals against early in the season when scoring seems to be a little bit high. That's really good. So he's done really well for this team to keep them in position to be at the top of the standings when they're missing their top goaltender, when they're missing a lot of other key players as well. And he's done a great job for them so far. So look for him to be sharp as well. This is the first time the Flyers are facing him, though. So, for a team that's struggled to get shots on goal, shoot a lot, because you never know what's going to find the net with this guy. It sure seems like he's been able to handle himself in games where the shot volume is high, but you got to test him. And if you don't, it might be an easy day for him. So that's the takeaway for that part of the game, at least when you're facing a young goalie like Vanecek, who has been in a lot of games now. He's really warmed up at this point. So you got to be ready to face him and ready to throw a lot of shots his way. Let's go to the players to watch. And for the Flyers, Kevin Hayes, 3 goals in his last 5 games. Yes, but here's the interesting dynamic to his game right now. He was, assuming Sean Couturier plays anyway, the lines that were shown in Saturday's practice, which Alain Vigneault said don't read too much into, but we're going to read into it a little bit because he was on the 4th line, centering the 4th line. And that's pretty significant. It sounds like another message being sent to one of your top players about what they need to do better. Hayes is not the scoring, it's the defensive play that needs to be better. And that's why he's kind of being shuffled around the lineup right now. So keep an eye on him. Could be a chance for him to have a big game. Could be a chance for him to try to step his game back up in the right direction from a defensive standpoint as well, especially if he gets better matchups for him as the game progresses. On the other side, you got to go with a guy like Alex Ovechkin for Washington. The numbers are starting to pile back up again. 3 goals, 3 assists in his last 5 games. And more than that, he missed 4 games as a part of being on the COVID list as well. And it's you wonder if the missing of 4 games, especially early in the year, means that you aren't going to be as sharp when you come back. You're not going to be as on your game. And for a guy like Ovechkin, who is such an all-world player, future Hall of Famer, scoring all the goals he has over his career, he's not missing a beat. The only thing that's kind of surprising is the fact that we're now getting to the point where, and he's only played 7 games, but you're getting toward the quarter mark of the season, and he's only at 3 goals on the season. And that's low for him. You expect him to be pushing by the quarter mark of the season when we're talking 14 games. You kind of almost expect him to be at 9 or 10 already. And he's not even at 5. But that can change very quickly in a game for him. He can get on fire really quickly. He especially can be dangerous if you give him too much power play time. And the Flyers have had some issues with discipline. So you got to watch for him at all times as well. And that makes it's a tough task, and the Capitals are missing some players. They're missing Evgeny Kuznetsov. They're going to be without Jacob Vrana for this game. They're missing a handful of forwards that can really help them from an offensive standpoint. So it makes it easier to focus on Ovechkin, but you still have to account for Nicholas Backstrom, TJ Oshie. Tom Wilson's had a great start to his season. They're getting Lars Eller back for this game, presumably. So there's a lot of guys who you have to factor in. And Ovechkin's the leader of that, though. He's the guy who's right at the top. He's the ultimate goal scorer in the league right now, and that's where it is with him. You got to keep an eye on him at all times, especially if you're going to be on the power play and trying to kill off penalties against him. So that's going to do it. That's our game preview. Check back here after the game. We got a busy Sunday for you. In addition to this video for the preview, Kyle will have a video after the game, post-game really quickly, and then following that, we'll be recording the next episode of the YWT podcast as well. So stay tuned for all that. That new episode will be out on Monday morning. Or later on Sunday night too, on some of the platforms. It'll be out on sportstalkphilly.com on Monday morning as usual. Until then, you can catch up with the latest episode of the YWT podcast from last week. Once again, be sure to subscribe to the YWT podcast on YouTube to be notified of all of our previews and recaps. Be sure to follow along during this afternoon's game. I have coverage over on Twitter at Kevin_Durso. Game updates over at Flyerdelphia on Twitter, and you can get my game preview before the game, post-game recap, and 5 takeaways all over at sportstalkphilly.com and 97.3 ESPN.com following the game. So with that, enjoy the game, and we'll see you next time for the next Flyers game preview.